What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. And unfortunately, the New York Mets fall in their first series. They do get one win, which is already off to a better start compared to what happened last season. But we're going to discuss all of it, the fact that there's overreactions, there's normal reactions, and then, we're going to give reasons why you shouldn't feel strongly one way or the other. But either way, we're going to jump into everything. Leave a like on your way into the live stream, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live on the channel. But yeah, the way that I would describe that series in Houston is what I've been saying in the post games is frustrating because when you look at the talent that this team has in their offense, when you look at the money attached to a lot of these guys, and you see the fact that they held Houston to as few runs as they did. They held them to, what was it, 6 runs? More times than not, you should win that series. You should absolutely win that series. Unfortunately, it just didn't go their way. It is 3 games in. I don't think there's any cause for hitting the panic button like some people are doing. But there definitely are things that it is fair to question and be a little bit worried about, which again we'll talk about. But like everyone just needs to pump the brakes. The Marlins are 3-1 right now. Like that should tell you that stop taking stock into 3-4 games of a 162 game season. But Matt, how are we feeling right now after the Mets unfortunately dropped that opening series?
Well, first of all, it's good to be back. It's good to finally see that baseball's back. Everything's up and rolling. I've been watching a lot of baseball this weekend. Just a lot of good games going around the league so far. A lot of good series. But yeah, I agree with you. Like the perfect way to summarize that series was great to be back, but frustrating as hell because the offense right now. While we're gonna get into it, and I'm not particularly too concerned just yet. I mean, obviously, if this continues to spiral and the Mets just can't score runs for some reason, then I'll start to flash up a little signs of worry and stuff. But it's only 3 games. Like as you said, the Marlins right now are 3-1, and not a lot of people expected. Like both of us, we didn't expect the Marlins to be any good. So it's early season. I mean, right now also like a lot of people are picking the Braves to win the NL East and make the playoffs. And right now they're 0-3 and currently losing to the Padres. So it's early. Like there's going to be struggles. There's going to be players that are just going insane right now. Like for example, Aaron Judge and the whole Yankees lineup. And I know people talk about the torpedo bats and everything, but we'll save that for another time. But yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating, especially when you see just how good the pitching was. And the starters, like we'll get into it, Clay Holmes was okay, not great, not terrible. He was okay. Tyler McGill actually put in a really solid pitching performance. And then surprisingly, Griffin Canning, even though he looked good in spring training, historically he has gotten beat up against the Houston Astros, and he went out there and pitched, 5 2/3 really good, 5 2/3 really good innings. Obviously, gave up the big hit to Yordan Alvarez for the Astros to take the lead. I'm sure we'll talk about that and more of Mendy's decisions with the pitching staff. But yeah, the starters were pretty good, and then you look at the thing that we're probably going to talk about a lot this podcast is the bullpen. The bullpen was simply amazing. I mean, in 3 games, 0 earned runs allowed from the bullpen, and everyone pitched. And for the most part, sure, there was a couple shaky performances from like the start, like maybe Stanek came in early and couldn't find the strike zone a little bit, but he eventually settled down. But everyone on that pitching staff, like I said, the bullpen, they were really good, but the offense has got to get going, and we're gonna get into that in this podcast.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part is that the pitching was just so good. You got as good of starts as you could get, especially from Tyler McGill and Griffin Canning. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the opposite of what we predicted happened. I think we predicted they would win the first game and the third game, and then of course it goes the opposite way. But yeah, just like your point with the Braves too, the Braves they're 1 for 22 right now with runners in scoring position. Like the season's young. The Cardinals are 3-0. We all of us picked them to be last place in the division. The Brewers, who we picked to be in first place, are 0-3. Like it's a long season, so there's just the overreactions. The Red Sox, who we predicted to be in first, are 1-3. People just need to take a deep breath right now. And even the White Sox have a win, which we predicted them to have basically no wins this season. So again, season's still young, but yeah, we have a lot to get into. So I think where we'll start is just, going game by game, talking about certain things to dissect there from those games as we go to game one, which we did a watch along and we did the post game recap after. Appreciate everyone that watched both. And this was, I feel like this game, I don't know if I would argue if this game was more winnable or game three. I would maybe argue this game just because the offense gave a little bit more during this game. And you saw at least some quality at bats from guys like Pete Alonso. You saw some quality at bats from Brandon Nimmo. And you did get hits throughout the lineup, at least a decent amount. They went over 6, though, with runners in scoring position. And it's just really infuriating. All they had to show for it with the offense is that sacrifice fly from Francisco Lindor, which I know the conversation around him right now, which we'll get into. But yeah, just you didn't get enough from the offense. Clay Holmes, he gave you what you would expect him to give you for his first time pitching in the starting rotation in a very long time. And I get that everyone's frustrated because of the fact that he gave such a good spring, but that's also why I can't understand why people are so quick to say, put him back in the bullpen immediately. The thing that I want to discuss heavily with Clay Holmes, because I feel like he deserves a lot of the conversation with this first game, since even though, again, it's not even his fault when the offense did nothing for him, but Clay Holmes just 4 walks. I get it. The issue was really the command there. He was either hanging stuff or he was missing the zone a little bit too much there. I want to remind everyone, and we emphasize this going into Clay Holmes' first start, it was going to be rough. There is going to be an adjustment period. Every single one of you, everyone watching this, you, me, everyone, Matt, me, like I said, all of us wanted Michael King when we heard he's available. Michael King, similarly, last year, transitioning from reliever to starter. Could I read you some of his first few starts real quick? His first start against the Dodgers, three innings, just over 3 innings, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Not terrible, but not great. His second start was horrendous. He pitched 4 innings, 7 walks in those 4 innings, allowed 2 earned runs. So, again, I am not saying he's going to reach Michael King's level, but when you look at the similarities between the two, in terms of the pitch mix and in terms of converting from relievers to starters, and the fact that just looking at Michael King's first few starts, very similar to Clay Holmes when you look at it in depth and look at the data, that he didn't really utilize the full arsenal. Michael King in his first few starts was really going 4-seam, sweeper, and sinker heavy. Does that sound familiar at all to what we just saw? Because I know it sure as hell does. So give Clay Holmes time. I think once you see him actually deepen the repertoire a bit, which he did say in the post game that, he feels he didn't utilize it enough, which is encouraging that he's acknowledging that that was the issue there and he's got to be better. Hopefully we see the kick change more, and hopefully we just see a little bit less of the sinker, because the sinker wasn't as lively as it usually is. I think just, again, small adjustments, and you're going to see a way better Clay Holmes in his next start against the Marlins, which, we'll talk about that series towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, no, everything I pretty much agree with you. And listen, it was nice to see, because we basically called it out when we were doing both the live stream and both the post game reaction to the first game. And we basically went out and said that, the problem with Clay Holmes in that first game was he just simply did not utilize his arsenal to the full effect. And he was primarily, because, when you look at the breakdown on Baseball Savant, his 3 main pitches were sinker, sweeper, slider. And like you said, it's not that surprising, because that was his 3 main pitches as a reliever, as a Yankee last year. And similarly, it worked out the same. It worked out the same amount with what you said with Michael King. And he threw the sinker 44 times, sweeper 26, the slider 8, and then when you look at the 3 other pitches that he developed later on in spring training, the cutter, changeup, and 4-seamer, he threw the cutter only 5 times, the changeup 4 times, and the 4-seamer 2 times. Now, the thing that I really like with Clay Holmes was that, first of all, like you said, he went out there and he acknowledged, like I said, I have to go out there and use more of your arsenal. And the thing that really got him in trouble last year with the Yankees, and when he was a reliever, was when his sinker was off, he was screwed right away because then his two primary pitches were sweeper and a slider. And I know that the sweeper and the slider are the two different pitches, but by the looks of it and just how both of them have that same effect come out of the hand, they're pretty much similar pitches. So when you're basically going out there on the mound and you're only throwing one type of pitch, it's very easy for the opposing hitters to pick up on that. And right then and there, you are screwed. And it cost Clay Holmes a lot last year. But the thing with this, but with the thing now with his expanded repertoire, he doesn't have to over rely on that sinker when it's not working for him. And I don't think the sinker was totally bad per se. I just think he was kind of misusing it a little bit because when you also look at the pitch breakdown, he was throwing his sinker a lot up in the zone and he was missing with it a lot. So I think, a couple adjustments should be made here. I think he has to stop relying on the high sinker, focus it more lower part of the zone, get more ground balls, get more swing rate, bring in more of the kick change because we've seen, the few times, the four times that he did throw the kick change, because if you look at the breakdown, he got, let's see, he got four swings on it, and I think one swings and a miss. For the four that he did, the four kick change that he did throw, they did look pretty. They did look pretty good. Sorry, and then when you look at the four seam and the cutter, I know like Clay Holmes doesn't have a overpowering four seamer, but I don't think you could just like completely go away from it because even we talk about with Griffin Canning, Griffin Canning doesn't have that overpowering fastball. He has to more rely on his breaking pitches, but you could sprinkle that type of pitch here and there. I think we'll see more of that pitch later down in the starts, and I think that the cutter is a huge pitch there because I talked about it before with the sinker and how Clay Holmes was missing a lot high with the sinker. I think if he could replace that instead with the cutter running up and in, I think he'll induce a lot more. He'll induce a lot more swings and misses with that pitch, and it's a nice substitution for the fastball because typically we see big time pitchers, especially big time aces, utilize their fastball up and in to induce swings and misses. But if Clay Holmes doesn't feel completely comfortable with his velo on his fastball, throwing it up in the zone, you could throw that cutter up in there, up on the hands or away from the plate, depending on what type of hitter's up there, and you can induce light contact like that, swings and misses, ground balls. So I think Clay Holmes is going to be fine. Like I said, he wasn't terrible, he wasn't great either, but you just make a couple of those small adjustments, and he'll go farther into games. He'll induce a lot of and again, we mentioned this before with Holmes during his first game. He didn't let up a lot of hard contact. I mean, he let up some, but a lot of it was ground balls. And for me, like I said, the one positive for me is that not everything was being just hit into the air deep. Then at that point, I would have said, "Ooh, there's a little bit more concerns here." But the fact that that everything was a ground ball and it was just sneaking through the holes, and the Astros were just finding those little gaps that the Mets fielders weren't there. I'm a little more comfortable to say like listen, make the adjustments, and I'm sure Clay Holmes will be fine.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, too, obviously one of those runs, and something that I still feel killed his outing a lot was the fact that
Yeah.
Elise Acuna couldn't make that play over at second base. And if that happens, I think we're talking about him going 5 innings, maybe a little bit over five. And you look at the baseline stat, then at that point, you, me, and everyone would have signed up for it, especially with this offense. And if we told you too that Oscar Braziban would come in, give 2 1/3 innings, Danny Young would come in, give an inning of work, and you know, not allow any runs to be effective in that inning of work there. And then for Braziban, the 2 1/3 innings, you would have signed up for it every single day of the week, twice on Sunday. So it's really just unfortunate because the offense didn't come through, and it really made Holmes it made him go under the microscope a little bit more than it probably should have. And then the offense too, just to segue there, just not coming through, and a lot of the same things we saw last season with this offense where they just were leaving too many guys on base. And it's really annoying because in the first inning, there was an opportunity there after the Lindor out. Soto got that single, Alonso walked, and then, Vientos and Nimmo come up, guys that you expect to bring in some runs there. They don't do it at all. And, you fast forward throughout this game, and there were just a couple of opportunities later on where they had them on the ropes. They just could not do it. That fifth inning where Soto was at the plate, the ball goes by the backstop there. Torrens got thrown out. Maybe you look at a run there with Soto at the plate to drive him in, which again, we'll never know now. Wasting that leadoff single from Brandon Nimmo in the seventh. There was just so much. And then the eighth inning was really the biggest fumble where they had 2 outs, but they got 2 walks, runners in scoring position. Vientos works an at bat to get a walk too. And then Nimmo goes up there and first pitch swings after 3 consecutive walks and then goes down. The ninth inning too. And, we had to deal with it all over social medias. Of course, Soto struck out to end that game because why would it be anyone else when we have to deal with Yankee fans and everyone alike just laughing at the fact that Juan Soto struck out there to end the game because they had him bases loaded with nobody out. Senja was at a spot where he had to be up there. You couldn't pinch hit for him. Lindor and Soto, though, need to come through there. I'm not going to kill Soto, though, because he was the only one that was consistent throughout the series, drawing walks, getting hits, got the moment in game 2, which we'll talk about when we get to game 2. But it's just infuriating that the rest of the offense could not come through. And the concerning part for me is that some of the plate approach throughout the series was just very concerning. And I don't understand too, especially with Pete Alonso, who just was great in the first 2 games of this plate approach. And then in game 3, it was out the window where he's first pitch swinging and getting out after walks. This game, though, that really bothered me, especially the Brandon Nimmo one, where 3 walks, you see 3 guys in front of you walk and you first pitch swing. I didn't understand that.
No, I agree. That first game, it was frustrating because, like you mentioned, the plenty of opportunities to score, and I agree with you with the lack of the plate approach with guys. When there's guys on base and there's guys are running runners with scoring position, and we'll get to them. How Eric Chavez is a problem on this team, and just with the whole plate approach and everything, but it's something that is very fixable, but it's fixable, but yet it's you look at it and you're like, can this be fixed? Because it's been a problem, not just this year, not just last year, but every year since Eric Chavez has been the hitting coach of the New York Mets. The Mets have really struggled with, and it's not every time and we've talked about this a lot of times last year about how the Mets have this bipolar offense, and it really varies from series to series because you're going to see times this year where everyone on the lineup is just clicking. The plate approach will be great. Everyone's hitting for power. Everyone's getting on base, and it'll be boom, boom, boom. And then there'll be times like this series where maybe it's one guy hitting like Juan Soto, for example, and then the rest of the offense is just completely dead. They get guys on base, they're able to draw walks, but they're not able to get that big time hit, similar to what we saw in the Dodgers series, where they were in every game in that Dodgers series. But when you can't capitalize on your chances, and then you give a better team with a good lineup, when you're not able to capitalize, and then the other team comes up with a good lineup, they're going to capitalize, and then the games will be blown away. And pretty much you could say that for every game of this series. I know the Mets won the second game, but the first game and the third game, they were very winnable. And I know the pitching staff did a great job, but ultimately it was the bats that did cost them. And yeah, I agree with you with the like I said, with the plate approaches, because especially like a couple times, like we mentioned, in the ninth inning where, guys get on base, you have guys like Josh Hader and Brian Abreu, struggling in the first game specifically. They're walking guys to give it up weak singles. And then you have guys like Pete up there, Brandon Nimmo going up there, and for some reason they're going up there and looking to swing first pitch. And then it's not even like they're making hard contact either. It's like they're light ground outs, or they're just popping up to the catcher or the first baseman. And to me, I do not get the plate approach. Specifically, like you mentioned with Pete Alonso, because Pete Alonso, for the first 2 games of the series, he had a very good plate approach, completely different to what we saw last year. He was up there, he was patient, he was looking for that pitch to hit. And I know he didn't get a home run in this series, or he really didn't get any big time hits, but I really like to see the fact that Pete was a lot more patient up there those 2 games. But that third game, after, because Josh Hader comes in, Soto walks, and he has a magnificent at bat. I mean, we really got to see Juan Soto for the first 3 games up close to the series, and every at bat that Soto has, it's just it's artwork because you just see how patient he is, how he fights off every pitch. It's like he takes every at bat so seriously, and it's so fun to watch him up there. And I can't wait to see him till he finally clicks and gets in that full time groove, and he's just up there, and it's like it's gonna feel like it's an automatic base hit every time. But like I was saying, like Juan Soto, he draws that walk. The Mets at that point had 1 hit in the ninth inning, and Pete Alonso goes up there and swings first pitch. And like I said, like this ties back to Chavez because I think Chavez's whole thing is like how Carson is like put the ball in play and whatever happens, whatever happens. But when you have opposing pitchers out there and they're struggling to find the zone, I don't get this whole idea of let's just immediately jump on them and try to surprise them. If you see the opposing pitcher struggling, be patient up there. Watch for your pitch. I would more like the attack first pitch mentality and to ambush the pitcher when the pitcher's completely comfortable up there and he's finding the strike zone at a consistent rate. Because then he might get caught off guard a little bit, and then there you are, first pitch swinging, boom. Either hit a home run or hit a a fly ball, a D fly ball into the gaps, and you get extra base hits there, whether it's a double or a triple. But the whole plate approach, and I'm sure it will get better, but it was just it was so frustrating to watch, as you said, this series.
Yeah, pulling the ball is bad, and we joke about how the Mets probably won't use the torpedo bats because of Chavez hating modern day baseball things. But yeah, like I think the one thing that is fair to be worried about right now, and to actually, I don't think it's an overreaction to want Chavez gone right now. I think
Yeah.
that is the one thing where if you say that, I think it's justified because you're talking now another season where this offense and especially the plate approach early on is just so piss poor with this offense, and it falls under Eric Chavez once again. And I just again, like it's really just infuriating, like you mentioned, the plate approach in these games at certain points because and it just was so Jekyll and Hyde. That's what makes no sense. And I get that's what baseball is at the end of the day, but it just makes no sense, especially when you know Brian Abreu in that first game and then Josh Hader in that game. Both of them had their pitch counts drove up so high, especially Abreu. You got to make him work there. You absolutely have to make him work more there. And it's just even more annoying because then they maybe would have made Abreu unavailable for the third game as well, which maybe could have helped out. So, and listen, again, I'm not disagreeing with this, but definitely am worried about Chavez, and I'm worried about the bottom part of the lineup. I'm not worried about the top guys because Lindor is too talented to not to underperform this heavily. Pete Alonso, even though he's been regressing each season, he's too talented to, again, be this bad. Mark Viento's made some solid contact throughout the series. Brandon Nimmo's too talented to be underachieving this much. I really just get concerned with the bottom of the lineup. I didn't love going into the year of the platoon DH. I'm willing to give it a chance and we'll see what happens, which Marte and Winker in the first 2 games, they each got a hit respectfully there. And then Winker, of course, with the RBI, which we'll talk about when we get to game 2. But I'm concerned about, Acuna and Beatty right now. I'm concerned about how much Torrens is going to give you production while Alvarez is down. So it's not something that I'm slamming the panic button on, but I'm definitely a little concerned at the very least. And I will say this, that I might be more open, and this could be an overreaction, but depending how this Marlins series go, if I'm Mendoza and this is similar to what it was in Houston, I think I would consider switching Alonso and Soto in the lineup. I think I would, because Soto's coming up with the bases empty way too much. I would try maybe putting Alonso ahead of him, maybe even, and this could be crazy, maybe even have him hit fourth. But I think at first you try hitting him third in the lineup. I don't know your thoughts on that, but that's my opinion. Like I would honestly, if the Marlins series goes the same, I would make that switch.
No, I could. I mean, listen, I could see it because if it's, I mean, especially against the Marlins. I mean, because other than Sandy and like Edward Cabrera, and even then Cabrera hasn't been great the last couple years, but I mean, the Marlins like just overall as a team and their pitching staff is not really great. So, I mean, if this offense is not being able to generate, offense against this Marlins team, and they're not able to get guys on base at a consistent rate and can't drive them in at a consistent rate, then yeah, I'll be a little bit concerned, and then I mean, listen, it wouldn't be the worst thing to do, a change in the lineup because as we saw last year, the one big change Mendy made to the lineup was moving Lindor into the leadoff spot, and look how that sparked the offense. So, listen, nothing's off the table, and Juan Soto is a guy that you want up there, with guys on base. Sure, sometimes he's gonna go up there and he's gonna draw walks, which I personally don't have any problem. I know you're paying Juan Soto $51 million a year, and you want to see him hit home runs. You want to see him hit balls into the gap and get extra base hits. But for a guy like Juan Soto, just get on base, and that's what he does best. Like I said, every time you see him go up there, it's like artwork seeing him up there. But the bottom of the lineup is definitely a concern, and I think Luis Torrens for me, I'm not completely concerned about because at the end of the day, he's a backup catcher. He's just filling in until Francisco Alvarez is ready, and then we'll see there. And pretty much, I mean, Torrens has been Torrens. I think he had a solid series. I mean, other than the one mistake he made behind the plate in the second game where he tried to backhand that pitch that Tyler McGill threw in the dirt on the strikeout to Jake Myers, and it allowed Myers to get the first base. I think other than that, he had a fine series. I mean, he had a couple extra base hits. He he threw a guy out. I think it was last game he threw a guy out trying to steal, and overall for me he was good. Listen, Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor. I mean, those are two guys that it's like they're defensive first outfielders, and if they manage to go out there and hit a couple extra base hits or hit home runs, that's like something you take cool. And by the way, it was nice to see Jose Siri get aggressive on the base pass yesterday and score that only run of the game. Don't love how exactly it was scored, just based on that it wasn't even a hit. It was the fact that Soto hit a ground ball to second base and Siri just had to get aggressive there. So good move, but the one position, and I'll bring it up now, and like you said, second base is a worry, and I'm officially hitting it. Brett Beatty is just not good. He's not good. It's simple as that. He's a spring
Yeah.
training merchant, and listen, I really want to give him a chance, but the one really red flag for me in this series was I think what he had like 3 at bats, 4 at bats maybe. None of them for me were competitive at bats. I mean, he
Okay.
was either striking out, looking silly up at the plate. He either made light contact, popping out to third base or first base, or did he even hit a ball into the outfield for a flyout assist? I'm not even sure. I mean, uh, to me, it's clear, and it's really frustrating because I really wanted to see Brett Beatty find the next step. And look, I get it; it's 3 games into the season at least, but we've kind of collected 3 years on Brett Beatty already, and we've seen that every time he comes up here, it's the same story. He might have a good week, he might have 2 good weeks, but ultimately, when he has to go up there and face really good pitchers and pitchers with really good pitch mixes and different kind of speeds, he struggles to adapt. And listen, I hope that it was just a bad 3 games, and he'll get some chances here against the Marlins against a weaker pitching staff, but I don't know. I just for me, I'm kind of hitting the panic button already on Brett Beatty because, like I said, the one red flag for me was I didn't like any of his at bats that he had this series.
Yeah, before I get to that, I just want to jump back to the Alonso Soto thing for a brief second. And the reason that I suggest doing that, I think Pete Alonso then would get more pitches to hit, which would also, of course, put him on base. And then the pitcher might have to attack Juan Soto a little bit more, which will get Juan Soto more opportunities. And we know either way, he has a good eye to where he will draw walks if he needs to. So I just wanted to, give my reason there. As for Captain Grapefruit League, I am truly like, this is why for weeks we never bought in. If he turns it around this upcoming series and then going forward, great. But I just am not counting on it because this is it's going exactly how we said. And someone was in my replies as like, "You're giving up on Beatty after 5 at bats." Laugh my ass off. Well, no, I'm giving up on him after 170 other at bats or 160 other at bats, whatever it is, that we've seen from him in the major leagues. And it's been the same exact thing. And that's why I'm losing patience with him quickly because with Lindor, we've seen him be an elite player. Pete Alonso, we've seen him be a great power bat. We've seen Brandon Nimmo put up great numbers. Mark Vientos last year. Brett Beatty's a different story. It is a completely different story to where you're warranted to be worried about him right now because he doesn't have the track record of being a good major league player. So again, for right now, it looks like he's still going to be Mr. March, Captain Grapefruit, whatever nickname you want to call him these days. But I just, and yeah, it's like, it's the same issues. Just putting the ball on the ground, no competitive at bats. It's the same
There's
thing.
there's no adjustments, and
None.
like like we saw like towards the end of spring training and pretty much all of spring training in general. The one thing that I did compliment Beatty on, and we talked about it last podcast, was that his approach looked a lot better at the plate. But of course, you're not facing major league caliber pitchers every time you go up there. And like I said, now that you're going up there, up at every at bat, and you're facing guys like, well, not Framber Valdez because Beatty didn't play it, but when you're facing guys like Hader, when you're facing guys like Abreu
Hunter
and
Brown.
Hunter Brown and guys like that, Beatty up there, just like as Brian said, like Beatty looks scared at the plate. He doesn't. It's like he's confused up there, and it's like I said, there's no adjustments. Like everything, like you said, it's on the ground. It's a weak contact. He's not fighting off pitches. Like I didn't like Acuna. Like Acuna this year didn't look great offensively either. But at least he had that one at bat against Josh Hader where he was fouling everything off. He was taking pitches. He was staying in that type of at bat. Beatty, he just goes up there and it's like you see 4 or 5 pitches and it's like, okay, back to the dugout you go on either a strikeout or a weak ground ball or a weak pop or a weak pop up in the air. So that's just the one thing. And like I said, for me, I hope that it was just a bad series from him and then he turns around against Miami. But the more and more at bats that I see of Brett Beatty so far, I'm just like, there's no changes. And it's like, yeah, you're just the same type of player that you were basically before. And we were right to not buy into the hype in spring training.
Yeah, which we'll talk about game two a little bit more now because it does correlate the fact that the bottom of the lineup just really did not like they're not giving enough competitive at bats outside of Luis Torrens, who, like you said, was probably the best hitter behind Juan Soto in the series, funny enough. But yeah, that game, I said it in my post game too, uh, after that, as good as it was to see the offense produce, I still felt there was a little bit to be desired there because it was the same thing where they were missing on some opportunities. The second inning, though, you had that Brandon Nimmo single. I'm glad he attempted to steal a bag. Would have been out if Rogers didn't drop the ball there, but thankfully he did. Mark Vientos is able to drive him in with a double. You have Winker who's able to drive Vientos in then with a single. And then in the third inning, you have the moment that we were all waiting for, Juan Soto's first home run as a New York Met. But then as you go throughout this game, like they kind of got lackadaisical at the plate until the sixth inning where you get the 2 leadoff walks and then you have Nimmo who hits into that double play there. Mark Vientos ends up flying out on that at bat. It's just, again, I would have liked to have seen them give a little bit more offensively because then even in the eighth, they waste 2 leadoff base runners. So as happy as I am about them getting the win, it's just I would have liked a little bit more from the offense. As for the pitching, though, again, just completely nails. Tyler McGill gave as good of a start as you could possibly ask for from him, and then the bullpen once again was great. But before we talk about the pitching, just give your thoughts with the offense. Do you agree with that, or what
Yeah,
are
I
your
mean,
thoughts?
it was basically the same of game one, just a little bit more offense, with them scoring 3 runs instead of 1 run. But I was gonna say, like, and I know this ties into Chavez again, but it looked a lot like the offense last year, where they just had the 1 or 2 innings, sprinkled in some offense, and then the rest of the innings, it was just completely zero dead. And you can't have that type of offense, especially like sorry, like the Astros, like they threw out a couple of very good pitchers this series. You know, with Hunter Brown, Framber Valdez, you know, Brian Abreu, and then Josh Hader also out of the bullpen. But you can't have these type of innings where it's like, okay, you get a run here or two, you know, you put up 2 runs here, and then the rest of the offense is just completely dead. And I mean, yeah, like you said, like the first inning, it was a 1-2-3. Then the second inning, you like to see Nimmo get on base. You know, he attempted to steal, did get lucky, and then you see, you know, Vientos double, Winker single, boom, 2-0. You know, Tyrone Taylor grounded into a double play, and then pretty much like you said, Soto hits the home run in the third inning, and then it's just fourth inning nothing, fifth inning nothing. You know, sixth inning you get Soto walking, Pete walks, and then Nimmo double play, Vientos fly out. So it's just we need, and again, this ties into more the better a plate approach when guys are on base, but the guys at the top of the order and guys at the bottom of the, and just pretty much everybody, like when guys are on base, there needs to be a lot more patience and just not like rushing and spamming and just like trying to you know, catch the opposing pitcher off guard, because like I said before, if the opposing pitcher is out there and he's, you know, he can't find the zone and he's struggling out there, you know, there's no need to go out there and, you know, swing first pitch or second pitch to try and catch the guy off guard. You know, let him make those mistakes, let him throw you a pitch that you could hit, and then if they can do that, then they'll be fine. But yeah, and then switching ahead to the pitching side, I mean, the pitching was, I mean, like I said, in the first game, it was very good with, you know, Clay Holmes. He was okay. You know, Brazaban and Danny Young came in there. And like back to what I was saying about game one, like the one really positive that I found in game one was, even though Clay Holmes struggled, the fact that you only had to use two relievers in Brazaban and Danny Young, and like I said, they pitched well. So the fact that you had a healthy bullpen now for the majority
That
of the
won
last
them
2
game
games,
2.
that was big, because game 2, it allowed them to go out there, because even with Tyler McGill, right? Because McGill he pitched 5 innings, but he pitched very well in those 5 innings. I mean, when you know, when you look at the pitch breakdown, he only used 3 type of pitches mostly: four seamer, slider, and sinker. And I like this. I was pretty surprised that he went more slider heavy, because typically the slider is the one pitch that he struggles to throw, and he does get hit hard off a lot. But you know, he was able to generate a lot of swings and misses off that slider. His four seamer looked good, his sinker as well. So he looked good. And then of course, the fifth inning, he gets into trouble with guys on first and second. You know, Reed Garrett comes out there. You know, he gets the first out. He walks. He walks Jordan Alvarez to get the bases loaded, and then he gets out of that. AJ Minter then comes in. He looked good throwing, you know, majority four seamer, cutters, and changeups. Stanek, you know, like I mentioned before at the start, you know, he came in, struggled to find the zone a little bit, but then he settled down. I mean, like I said before in the post game for game 2, when I was in the comment section, when Paredes hit that ball into the air, I got so scared, because it looked like that ball was going out, but thankfully it stayed in. Like I said, Stanek was able to relax after that. He got through that inning, and then Edwin Diaz, he came in and he looked good. I know the velo was still not at 100% where it was last year, because he was only topping out at about 98 on that fastball, but his fastball was fine, his slider was fine, and you know, people were freaking about the velo. I'm not too concerned yet. I think it was like with last year, and I know he was coming off the injury last year, but I'm gonna give it a little bit of time for Diaz to get his velo back. If he can't get his velo back completely, though, like for me, I'm still not completely like scared, because I'm more looking at the fact that like I wouldn't mind a trade-off per se, where it's like, okay, he loses a little bit of velo, but if he's able to gain a little bit of control more in his fastball and his slider, like I'll completely take that. And I think Diaz can still be a very effective closer and reliever if he's only topping out at 90 on his fastball. Where I like to see him hit 101, 100 consistently, yes, but like I said, I will take the trade-off if less velo means a bit more control on his 2 pitches.
Yeah, Stanek was really the only one from the bullpen that gave me any sort of heart attack and worries. You had Reed Garrett that came in, and just beautiful watching Reed Garrett pitch, by the way. Love me some Reed Garrett. And he was just painting up there. He was just absolutely painting. The Christian Walker sweeper that he threw
Yeah.
on that fourth pitch to generate the swing and miss was absolutely beautiful. And we said going into the year, this bullpen was going to be one of the bright spots of this team. I had not envisioned in the first series this good, though. I'll be completely honest with that. And like you said, though, with Diaz, I'm not worried at all because we knew with Diaz, we talk about it all the time. You know, from the first few pitches of his outing, how it's going to go. If he's all over the place, you know it's going to be one of those cardiac events. But when he's dotting it up, when he's locating well, generating the swing and misses, you know he's just going to shut the door there. So, yeah, I'm not too worried with Diaz because, like you said, as the season progresses, I think the velo will be there. Tyler McGill, another one that honestly got screwed by the defense here in
Yeah.
terms of how his outing could have went because of the fact that in that inning where he got that strikeout, but it ended up being that wild pitch, which allowed Myers to get the first. I thought right then and there they should have pulled Tyler McGill. They didn't, and then he allows that single, but Reed Garrett works out of that damn jam, and it's weird just going back to the offense that they had less hits in that game than game one, yet they ended up actually producing. So, again, just all around big worries with the offense. The win, though, it was nice to get that. And it was nice to see the bullpen the way it was. And then AJ Minter, too, came into the game and he was nice. But let's segue to game three, which this one was, again, I go back and forth between if this one was more infuriating or game one, but one hit, and it was from Juan Soto, and it was early in the game, a Juan Soto double, and then the offense was pretty much done for the rest of the day. It was absolutely pathetic. There's no way around it, just not driving the pitch count up on Arrighetti. Their only run came because Jose Siri walked. Soto hits into that ground out, and then Siri um was already on second there. He ended up getting to third though on the Lindor flyout. And as Arrighetti's throwing it ever so slowly to first base to get Juan Soto out, he ends up running home, showing the electric player that he is. Where this was lost, though, not just from the offense, we fast forward to the bottom of the sixth inning. So Griffin Canning, who was, again, as good as you could have got in an outing from him, giving you just baseline wise what you would ask from him. And if you were to tell me that he would allow just 2 runs in his outing, every one of us is signing the dotted line because we know the bullpen's good and we know the offense, or we at least think the offense would show up. But the sixth inning, after Chas McCormick grounds out, right then and there, I texted in our group chat and I said it out loud: pull his ass out of the game. I do not want to see Griffin Canning going through this order a third time. Then Jose Altuve gets that single, and I'm like, here we fucking go. Canning is still in the game, gets that force out from Paredes, and I said, all right, now you have to pull him. You cannot let him face Yordan Alvarez. You have an $11 million left-handed reliever in the bullpen. You have a second left-handed reliever in the bullpen in Danny Young, who only pitched an inning in game one. Put one of them in the game to face Yordan. They didn't. And with the way Canning reacted, I thought Yordan went yard in on this one. But it ended up being a really long double, 416 feet, probably a home run in a couple of ballparks. But that made it 2-1 the ball game. And then Jose Budo comes into the game. I, for the life of me, cannot understand the decision. It is not why they lost at the end of the day, because of the fact that, again, the offense just was completely pathetic. But even later on in the game, too, like, Jose Budo is in for way too long, and I don't understand why. You should, like, you have an off day. Why was Budo not in earlier in that last inning when Canning should have been out? Or why was Danny Young not in? And then why was Budo still in to start the eighth inning when you have an off day tomorrow? And instead, you let him face 4 batters after walking and allowing a single. Right then and there, he should have been out of the game. But then the bases eventually get loaded, and you bring Max Kranick in for his first major league appearance in 3 years, feeding him to the Wolves and letting him face Yordan Alvarez there with the bases loaded and 1 out. He got out of the jam and looked as good as he did in the spring. But again, it did not matter because of this offense. And it just sucks because you have Kranich doing his Nunez impression of being the fireman there. Jose Budo giving you volume there. Cannon gave a good baseline start, predominantly slider heavy, was not locating his fastball well. And honestly, he was all over the place for most of the outing. Like he was either missing so much or he was painting. But um, yeah, it was just, again, it was really infuriating. 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. That says it all.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, massive credit to Griffin Canning because he was. I know, like you said, he was either missing or dotting, but for the most part of that game, I thought he just provided innings, he provided length, and basically that's why the Mets signed Griffin Canning ultimately just to be the inning eater. I know probably, and he would look a lot more effective out of the bullpen, but for right now, as the job he's got to do, as as a fifth guy, as a fifth, fourth guy, he did a very good job in that game, and I liked his pitch mix. He went very slider heavy. He got a lot of whiffs on that slider. He threw it 45 times, got 7 whiffs on that. Threw mixed his four seamer there a couple times. Threw the changeup to third most, and then his cutter he only threw third time. He only threw 3 times. Sorry, but yeah, Griffin Canning went out there and he basically did his job of just going out there, eat innings, and keeping the Mets in the game. But like you said, and then massive credit to Jose Siri, with that great heads up play in order to score that run. Because other than that, like we were saying for the whole podcast, the offense was anemic and dead. But yeah, I remember talking about this, and we talked about this too. Like the one thing that we were looking for Mendoza to improve upon coming into a second season was how he managed his bullpen,
Yep.
and like so for me with Griffin Canning, I didn't have a problem with him starting the 6th inning. With Chas McCormick coming up there, and like you said, you would have pulled him after there. I didn't have a problem with him facing, Jose Altuve or Isaac Paredes out there. Because I'm more of like I have more had this mindset where if my starting pitcher's like really working well and he looks comfortable out there, I'm more inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt and let him face the tougher competition. But when Yoran Alvarez comes up there, and Yoran is just a beast on his own, and at that point, you have to look at the situation. It's like, listen, it's late in the game. The offense for the whole series has struggled. I cannot, even though Canning is pitching well, I have to pull him just because I cannot risk it. And Canning did get Yordan. He got Yordan out the last 2 times. So at that point, you say, listen, Kang did his job. He got Yordan out twice this game. Like, let's not play with fire here. Let's get someone from the bullpen up, either Danny or AJ Minter. And I didn't get why they didn't want to go to either Minter or Danny Young. And I get Minter pitched the other night, but still, like you said, you have the off day. Like today would have been the off day. So, and then even if Minter wasn't ready to go, you had Danny Young already ready, um, off 1 days of rest. So I did not I didn't get that decision at all. And then as you said, Jordan doubles and I agree with you. And this year when it left the bat and off Kane's reaction, I thought it was gone, but thankfully it stayed in the park. But then yeah, and then like we were talking about with the because Jose Budo then comes in. He has a really good 7th inning. And then he comes up for the 8th inning, and I didn't get that at all because I would have for me my thinking was clean inning. Just go out there and let Max Kranich have a clean inning because he didn't pitch at all this series, and how he looked in spring training. I'm like, listen, this is his first opportunity to go out there. Give him a clean inning and just let him not have to go there and do fireman work like we saw Deadnell Nunes did last year. But I mean, credit to him because he came into about as a toughest situation as you can with the bases loaded, and he got Yoran a pop out. Fantastic play by Mark Vientos to go out there and have that nice grab to get the second out, and then he got Christian Walker to ground out the inning, and then at that point right there, I'm like, you got out of this, like the fact that you were able to get out of it, like that has to be a momentum changer right away from this game. And then when Josh Hader comes in, you get Soto to have that leadoff walk, and now you have Pete and Nimmo coming up and Vientos, and you're like, okay, here we go. Now you go up there, you got out of it, you got Soto on base. Now take the lead, and then we go from there. But then we said again, the poor plate approach.
First pitch swinging Pete Alonso.
Pete first pitch swinging pops up, Nimmo grounds out, and then Vientos unlucky with the hard lineup to Jeremy Pena. But And I know, like, you also brought up, like, you didn't know which game, the first or third game, was more infuriating. For me, I think it was this game because I think all along it was this game was in their hands, and it's just the offense just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, honestly, that's fair, especially when I mean the Astros also scored one less run, and like if Mendoza does make the right decision there, I don't know how much it changes just with this offense. And let's not forget too, in Nimmo, he also swung first pitch. It just ended up going foul. So, um, just not good plate approaches there. And the Vientos one was honestly the one I was the least mad at. He made good contact. It just unfortunately, Jeremy Pena was there because, of course, the guy who hit that home run that game was there. And in terms of the Jordan home run, because I wanted to look it up, or the double rather, it would have been a home run in 23 of 30 ballparks. The only ballparks that would not have been a home run in are Chase Field, Fenway Park, Coors Field, funny enough, Comerica Park, obviously in Houston. I'm still calling it Minute Maid. I do not care. Kauffman Stadium and Target Field. But the Jeremy Pena one would have been out in 6 of 30 ballparks, which is what's insane. The only ballparks there was a home run in is obviously Minute Maid, Comerica, Guaranteed Rate Field, Citizens Bank Park, Petco Park, and T-Mobile Park. So it's just weird with that. And also, I just realized the Winker one would have been a home run in one of his flyouts in one park, Oracle Park. I thought that was leaving the yard. But either way, yeah, it just I could get behind the third game being more frustrating just because of what you mentioned that I forgot to even get into, that you have momentum on your side after Kranick got out of that jam and then Soto drawing that leadoff walk, and especially with how competitive that at bat was, and with the fact that he had to deal with everyone posting him striking out to Hader last time, it would have been nice for his team to have his back there, but unfortunately that was not the case. It's just infuriating. It really is. But they face the Marlins next, which we'll talk about that series in a bit. Do you have anything else to say about this series, though, before I answer some comments, and then we'll preview the Marlins series and probably wrap this thing up?
No, I'm good.
All right, so let's see what's going on in the chat, and then, like I said, after that, we will just wrap things up after previewing the Marlins series. So let's see. Brian saying when the bats get going, this team is going to be really good. 100%. It's just a matter of if they could get going, and that's what is a little worrisome, is that just so much Jekyll and Hyde, which it is baseball. Like, offenses are going to have cold streaks, but as long as it's not what it was last year, that's all I ask. Not a fan of Nimmo in the 4 hole though. I don't mind it, but I don't love it. It just, again, like, who are you putting there right now? Realistically, who are you putting there? And I don't hate it because when Nimmo gets going, I think honestly he's a really good 4 hitter behind Pete Alonso, because I talked about the ability to draw walks there and maybe provide a little bit of power if he sees some pitches. I don't hate it, but you just got to wait to see when things are clicking, if things will be better there.
Yeah, because I know, like, everyone's still kind of, they view Brandon Nimmo as that stereotypical leadoff guy because he doesn't have that build of as like a guy that's supposed to hit fourth spot, because typically we know the guy hitting fourth supposed to be, one of the bigger guys, one of the guys that can hit for power. But to be honest, like, Nimmo, ever since coming up here in 2016, like, he has changed a lot as a player. Like the Mets tried him off as a leadoff guy. He did constantly get on base, but he was never that, that speedster, steal first guy. And then, I mean, pretty much the last couple of years, Nimmo has kind of turned into a guy that's hit more for power. I mean, we've seen cold streaks from him where he hasn't been able to hit for power, but for the majority of the part, the last couple of years, he's really turned into a guy that hits power. And as you said, like, once Nimmo's gonna be able to turn it on, like, you'll see that power start to flourish. And as you said, also, like, who else are you going to hit there? Because, I mean, you have Vientos there, but pretty much Vientos and Nimmo have been switching, either 4 or 5 just due to the pitching matchup. So I don't have a problem with Nimmo hitting fourth personally.
The only thing I could say is if you do what I suggested before by putting Juan Soto third in the lineup, you could either put Pete second or Vientos second, and then whoever's not hitting second hit cleanup, and that moves Nimmo down to the 5 hole, which I don't know how much that would do for this offense, but that could be the way to
You,
get
you,
Nimmo out of the cleanup spot.
you know what? Actually, now that you say that, I actually wouldn't mind seeing Vientos back in the 2 hole with
He was good there.
With Soto 3. Not only he was good there, but Vientos, for the most part, that series, and like I said, it's still early, so maybe he just had a bad series. But I didn't like a lot of his plate approaches in that series. I felt that he was chasing way too much, and pitchers are now they're going to make adjustments on Mark Vientos because he had that one breakout year last year. He hit for a lot of power, so Vientos is going to have to make some adjustments to counter that. But I think, if you hit Vientos in that 2 hole and now you give him that major protection of a guy like Juan Soto
I
behind
was
there,
just about to say that.
Vientos will get a lot more hittable pitches. So I wouldn't mind it. I'm not gonna suggest that switch yet, just because it was only 3 games, and I still think this lineup can work as currently constructed. But if things don't work, I wouldn't mind seeing Vientos back there in the 2 hole with Soto in the 3 hole.
Yeah, honestly, I think that could be the way to do it because the whole thing that everyone talked about with Pete Alonso hitting third behind Soto is, well, it's protection for Juan Soto there. I think it lengthens the lineup a little bit if you go Vientos in the 2 hole, where he's going to see the pitches like you mentioned because he's going to have Juan Soto hit behind him. Because honestly, I get what you're saying with the plate approach, but that's just who Mark Vientos
Yeah.
is. Like, and that's what we said going into the season. He's someone that chases a lot, and it's unfortunate, but that's just who he is. I think if you give him the opportunity and hitting fifth or fourth in the lineup and not having any real threats behind him allows the pitchers to pitch around him a little more, and he's getting out a lot more easily. I think if you move him in the 2 hole again, I think that'd be the perfect spot. And then you put Pete Alonso in that cleanup spot. Nimmo hits fifth to kind of reset the order down there. And then I get that it might suck for the lefty thing where you might have Winker and Nimmo back to back lefties hitting. But realistically, I think that it wouldn't be the worst thing. And either way, they're going to pull Winker when lefties are on the mound. So why not just why not go with Nimmo and then Winker hitting six? And then once Alvarez gets healthy, you could even have the conversation of Alvarez hitting six and Winker behind him to maybe help a little bit there. So it's a conversation to have. I don't think they're going to switch the lineup unless things continue to be this way going forward, but it's something to think about for sure. Let's see though. Uh, did Sack pitch much in spring? I don't remember him getting many innings. That could be why he struggled with this command. I think it was kind of in between. I think he got a respectable amount of outings to the point where he should be effective, but I don't think it was like an absurd amount of outings. I
No,
do want
no, Staggy. I mean, at least from what I remember off the top of my head, he did get a couple of appearances there,
he had
and
5
yeah.
outings.
So I mean, that's pretty much like I mean, that's a lot for a reliever. I mean, and the only time he really struggled, like at least from what I remember, what was the last one against the Yankees where
I was about to say that.
he started and he couldn't even get out of the first inning because I think he walked like 2 guys and gave up a base hit. But I mean, listen, with the control, I mean, that's just who Stanek is. Like he's always been that type of guy. It's just whether he could cut back a little bit because once like we were saying, when Stanek is on and his velo's up there and he's getting swings and misses, like Stanek is a very valuable weapon out of that bullpen, but it's give or take. Sometimes he's gonna have outings where he's unhittable, and then sometimes he's gonna have some outings where he's gonna have some trouble finding the play. It's just it's all about balance with him.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I get it that, it's frustrating for people, but we also said that don't put him in high leverage spots this year. And I think that will help. And that's one thing that I didn't love that Mendoza did in that game. And I said it, I texted in the group chat. It didn't matter in retrospect, but just process base alone, Edwin Diaz should have been in for
Yeah.
the 8th inning and then Stanek for the 9th. I did not want Ryan Stanek facing that part of the order. It worked out, but again, just going forward, something to keep an eye on if they continue to do that. Let's keep it real. The Mets pitching ain't great. I disagree with this. And even if you mean the starting pitching, it's 3 games in. I can't sit here and give an opinion on that, and I don't think it's fair to give any sort of take either way on that. On paper, sure, it's not the sexiest, but we know what David Stearns does with pitching. He finds guys that will put up just the most random seasons. You look back and say how they have that season, and it works out. If it doesn't work out, then we'll see. But we're only 3 games in, and the starting pitching was the least of the
Yeah.
issues throughout this series to where I can't sit here and say, oh, well, the starting pitching is going to be a problem. That's one of the least of my concerns outside the bullpen right now.
The pitching is going to be more than fine because, like I said, this is what Stearns does. He finds these under the radar guys. And I mean, we were already big on the bullpen, and one of my bold predictions coming into the year was that the bullpen was going to finish with a top 3 ERA. I mean, so far through 3 games, it looks good. I mean, obviously, we still have a long way to go, but I trust this bullpen to go out there and get outs in big time situations. And then, sure, like the starting pitching, like the names on paper, they don't look sexy, but Clay Holmes, while he wasn't great, he's going to be better. He's going to make adjustments. McGill, it's all about consistency with McGill because we've seen him have really good starts. We've seen him have really bad starts too. So it's just all about if he could, find that consistency. And then with Griffin Canning, like, listen, I don't expect Griffin Canning to go out there and pitch every single game like that. But if for the most part, he goes out there and he has a reliable outing where he goes 5 or 6 innings and he's only giving up 3 or 4 runs maximum, then I expect this offense, to bounce back and win those type of games where he's given up those type of numbers. And then of course, we'll see what happens with Peterson. He's pitching the opener in Miami. We'll see how Kodai Senga looks, and then you still have Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas to come back. So the pitching's fine. I'm not worried about the pitching at all.
And people are going to hate me so much for saying this. I know it. And I'm sorry in advance because I get that people are exhausted of this conversation because this is like the pitcher version of Brett Beatty. So I get it. I'm going to preface that off the rip.
The McGill
I
stock.
said it. I said it. I'm not buying a lot of stock. I am buying a little stock in Tyler McGill right now. The stuff is too good for him to not work. It's just, again, about putting it all together. I think you and I, when we had the conversation the other night, and it still remains that his tools would just work so good
The bullpen.
out of the bullpen if they utilized him there. They just do not do it. But like even in that start, everything graded out so well, and he got a lot of swing and miss stuff, generated the whiffs. The thing that was encouraging the most to me, his slider, I feel like had a lot
Yeah.
more movement on it than it has had in previous seasons, especially last season, where every time he was throwing a slider, our hearts dropped to the damn floor. But for right now, it's like I gotta buy a little stock in. Like, I'm sorry if the slider truly is that lively and stays consistent. This could freaking work, and I want to believe in it. I want to. I'm not fully there. I want to make that very clear that I am not fully there because similar to Brett Beatty, I have to see it to believe it over a long time and for a consistent basis. But I'm very encouraged with what I saw because it had, I think, 5 more inches of horizontal break compared to what it usually does, his slider this past outing. And I'm pretty sure it also had more IVB as well compared to what it usually does. I get that I'm holding on to hope here, but it's just, again, the stuff is too good for him to not put it all together and be just a decent, just a respectable starting pitcher.
Yeah, that slider. That's the one pitch that back a couple years and even last year. That's the one pitch that really held them back from taking that next step because it seemed every time he threw a slider or a cutter or whatever, it's like it just opposing lineups just took advantage of it, and they either made really hard contact off of it and or hit home runs off of it. But his slider last game looked really good, and I mean I'm looking on Savant right now, and he threw the slider 17 times, got 9 swings and 5 lifts on it. So that slider looked a lot better, as you said. It had a lot more cut to it, had a lot more life on it. If he could just throw that type of pitch consistently at that level, and I mean, I still think for me, I would like to see him in a bullpen role like his brother Trevor McGill is in
Yeah.
Milwaukee. I think he would be really effective there. But I mean, I still have a little bit of hope with McGill, but it's similar to like what we were saying with Beatty. Like, I gotta see at a consistent level. He had the one good start. He's gonna start the home opener against the Jays. I mean, let's see how he looks at home against Toronto. If he has another good start and it's two, then I'll say okay, make it three, and then make it four, and then if he's going out there, every 5 days, and he's giving the Mets, 6 innings consistently, like around 3 runs, 4 runs, then I'm like, okay, now we actually have a solid, reliable back of the end arm out there. And then if not, it's then he'll just stay the same Tyler McGill as we've seen over the last couple years. But I mean, like you, I still have a little bit of hope with Tyler McGill, but I,
It's not
I think
fully there, and I get that.
yeah, but I think ultimately, like as I said, the best spot with him for him would be in the bullpen.
Also, I want to correct a little mistake that I made there. Because he was generating more IVB, not horizontal break than normal. It was a little bit more, but it wasn't anything like too drastic. Like I said, he was getting a lot more IVB though on the slider. And again, if that's something that's consistent, could this finally be it? I'm begging. I'm begging for it to be it with Tyler McGill. But we will see. Let's fast forward to the what's coming up starting tomorrow, which is that series in Miami as the Mets will take on the 3-1 Miami Marlins. Hopefully, the Mets could start to get them to get back to reality there and get to where the Marlins record should be, which we know that they shouldn't be a 3-1 club right now. But yeah, in terms of the pitching matchups, the world's famous pitcher will get the first game for the New York Mets tomorrow. Could you tell me who that is?
I believe his name is Result.
And he left as he was saying that. His computer did not get the results that David Peterson does, but results man is that starting pitcher, Mr. David Peterson, going against Cal Quantrill. In terms of game two, Sandy Alcantara, which does scare me, going against Kodai Senga, which we will see.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally backed out there.
I was gonna say, yeah, I said before your computer didn't get the results that David Peterson does.
Yeah.
But game two, Senga versus Sandy Alcantara, a little bit of an ace off there, and then for the final game, Clay Holmes versus not the Connor Gillespie that was on the San Francisco Giants, but Connor Gillespie of the Miami Marlins. And then they finally come home, or they have the off day and then come home. But what are your predictions for this 3-game set, and what are some thoughts you have going into the series here?
I'm hoping that they could sweep the Miami Marlins. Especially like like looking at the division, we all circled the Marlins as the team that you have to beat up on, because we all said that the Phillies, the Mets, and the Braves, they're all going to be there. Couple games within each other. The Nationals, they're going to be those tough, pesky games, but the Marlins are that one team where they're not good. I know they're 3-1, but no, sorry.
They could.
They played the Pittsburgh Pirates. I am not falling for that record whatsoever. And they kind of did get some devil magic throughout this series. I mean, all three of their wins, I believe, were on a walk-off. So crazy. But no, listen, the Mets just have to take advantage of a bad Marlins team. And like I said, you look at the pitching matchup, you have David Peterson going against Cal Quantrill. Quantrill hasn't been good his last couple of years, and I know Peterson isn't exactly the greatest, but still, he's results man. He will get those results. So hopefully they take that one. The second game is the most intriguing pitching matchup, because you have Kodai Senga, obviously his first start. He's going to be on a pitch limits at 75 pitches. So I'm interested to see how he looks, considering that it's going to be his first start since yes, minus spring training, since game one against the Dodgers of the NLCS. So interested to see how he looks. I'm hoping that the control's there and he doesn't have a lot of walks, considering that he's going to be on a pitch limit. So hopefully he could give the Mets like five innings. Not a lot of runs either. And then obviously Sandy Alcantara going for the Miami Marlins, and hopefully future New York Mets Sandy Alcantara, but we'll see. We'll see about that. But yeah, the game two pitching matchup, that's definitely the most intriguing. And then third game, Clay Holmes on the mound for the Mets. Let's see how much of those adjustments he made after his first start against the Astros. And then Connor Gillespie, who put up a 5.40 ERA so far. Not the greatest either. So really, the Mets should go out there. They should win this series. I would love them to sweep, but at minimum, just take 2 out of 3.
Which 2 games are you picking for them to win?
They'll win the Clay Holmes start.
Okay.
Do I want to go Senga, or does results man do it? That's the main question.
To me, that's a layup of a question.
You know what? Since Sandy is going game two, and we know the offense hasn't been there at all to start the season. I'll say they'll win game one, they lose game two, and then they win the final series. They win the final game of the series.
Yeah, the best news is that they're not going to be facing a lefty this series, so we don't have to see our right-handed Daniel Vogelback play much of this series, thankfully. And then on top of that, the Mets just struggle against lefties in general. I'm going with the same thing. I think they win the first game. I think they lose the second game, win the third game. I just think Clay Holmes is in a spot where he's going to be primed to bounce back. David Peterson going to win or he's going to have the most wins in the National League by the end of the year, right? So, because he is results, man. And I think they're going to come back home with a 500 record on the season. Nice 3-3, and then we'll see what they could end up doing against the Toronto Blue Jays, which we will talk about that. And I just mean the rotation, Brian. Sorry for confusing you on that one. I meant with the rotation. But yeah, just give me the win tomorrow at least. Give me a nice little birthday present for tomorrow. I'd appreciate that one. Results, man. So give me the results. Just give me the results. But do you have anything else to add before we wrap things up here?
Nah, I think I'm good. Good, we can wrap it up here.
All right, so we will end it. Be on the lookout for post games, of course, throughout this entire series. Be on the lookout for the podcast episode that will be after the series, as we do them after every single series. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. Turn on your notifications so you know when I upload or go live on the channel. And we'll see you guys in the next one.